Yeah, good afternoon, and appreciate you being here on a Sunday. Doesn't feel like a Sunday to us. It's a game week Tuesday. Good work so far in preparation for Thursday night, which I think we're all looking forward to. I know the players are. They've worked very hard through the off season and this summer to get ready for this. So we're hoping to go out and play well against a really good football team that last year, that university had a lot of success against us. So, we want to go out and we want to play to our potential. I'm sure there'll be some nerves, there'll be some anxiety, but that's okay. I'm really proud of the way these guys have prepared and gotten themselves ready to get back to this point. So it should be a fun night.
Yeah, Jim, can you speak to the quarterback decision and how you arrived at it?
Well, a lot of metrics are measured. We keep track of everything, off of film. Sometimes the way it looks in practice is not, to the naked eye, is not exactly the reality of the situation. But really all four of those guys. Let's kind of eliminate Tucker just because Tucker was hurt a lot of camp, and it was really a three-man race between Zion, who's our starter for, as you guys know, 12 games last year, and Taquan, who was a starter at the start of the season before he got hurt the second drive, and then Joe, who came in new. And all three of those guys really competed hard. They competed well. They competed against each other, but they supported each other along the way. And at the end of the day, in compiling all the statistical data, you still trust your gut, when you've been doing this a long time. And I feel like as a staff, there was a consensus that at this point, well, I don't feel like it, I know that there was a consensus that we wanted to go with Joe. And you know what? That says great things about Joe, but it doesn't say anything negative about Taquan and Zion. They're both really good players. And we have a situation here where we have three guys that have played in Division I games. Well, has Joe played Division I? Is main division?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have three guys that can go in and get it done. And that's a luxury. A lot of times people say, well, if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have any. I'd say in this case, we've got three. But, we just decided as a staff that we were going to go with Joe.
Do you anticipate a game plan that might use more than one quarterback?
I'm not the type of guy that likes to do that. I think you throw your quarterback out there and you support the heck out of him. I was thinking about this, anticipating this question or a question like it. I was trying to think about during my head coaching career. I believe last year in that Myrtle Beach game was the only time I pulled a quarterback out of a game because I didn't feel like his performance was what it needed to be. And that was Zion, and it really wasn't necessarily because of his performance. It was just to calm him down, and then we put him back in. I may be wrong, but I believe that's a consistent throughout my career. I think you pick a guy, and you support the heck out of him, and you go with him. And if there's ever a chance to make a move or a reason to make a move down the road, then you're prepared to do that. But you want to throw all your support at one guy.
What stood out about Joe?
What stood out? Well, like I said, it was really close. So I would say that, once again, when I say this, where I say what stood out about him, I just want to be clear that it's not a negative towards the other guy. Joe's very poised. Joe has some height to him. Joe has played a lot of snaps of college football. He's thrown a lot of passes in college football. I think there's a strong correlation between, the number of snaps you play at quarterback and the number of throws you've had and your ability to have success. And so that was important to us. He's got a very calm demeanor. He's a strong but quiet leader. I think that, if things aren't going well, he can keep his composure very well. If things are going well, he stays steady. And so I'm excited to see him go out and play Thursday night. I think he's going to play well. We have to do a great job of supporting him. We have to be able to run the ball well. Our receivers have to get open and make catches. We have to block up front. We have to play good defense so that we don't put him in tough situations. So it's all about the team supporting each other and supporting our quarterback.
How valuable
What's that, Joe?
How valuable was his previous experience with Coach Charlton at Maine? I'm thinking because he stays in a similar position with their quarterback.
Well, he's probably played the most games in this system, so just knowing the nuances of the system inherently, because of experience, I think that, gives him a little advantage. And it is important, being able to change things at the line of scrimmage like you like to be able to do now in college football. Maybe seeing things just a tad bit quicker because you've seen it before, you've been in that situation before. You'd hope that those things translate to success on the field.
Anticipate any special packages you kind of introduced to use Robertson's quarterback?
What's that?
Do you anticipate any special packages to be introduced to use Robertson?
I already answered that question. Yeah. You asked the same question about using, the other quarterbacks, right? Yeah. So I answered that.
What went into wanting to hire the special assistant, Pagano?
Johnny? I call him Johnny. John Pagano. Well, first of all, we go way back. I've known him since I was 6 years old. We were in Boulder, Colorado together. My dad was assistant coach at University of Colorado. His dad was a head coach at Fairview High School, which was our local high school. Our families were really close. We share a very similar background. Our dads are coaches. His brother was a head coach in the NFL. Johnny and I worked together in New Orleans. We worked together. He worked with my dad in Indianapolis. He's been really close friends for a long time. He's a tremendous defensive mind and a tremendous football mind. He's had a lot of success at the NFL level as a defensive coordinator in San Diego and in Oakland, and then as a position coach other places that he's been. And he spent some time with us this spring. He came in and just was hanging out with us. And he really bonded with our staff. I think our players really took to him. They liked him. He gave them great advice, off the field, whether it be about football or about life. Kind of from the perspective of an older guy that's spent time in the NFL. And he had a willingness, he had a desire. He's passionate about football, and he had a willingness and a desire to get back closer to it. So took this opportunity to hire him, and he's been a tremendous asset, I think, to our whole staff. He's been a tremendous asset to me. Our football backgrounds are very similar. Our philosophies about not just defensive football, but football and how to run a team are very similar. He's a guy that has a lot of experience that I can bounce things off. We have a fairly young defensive staff, and I have a tremendous amount of confidence in him. But when you're able to bring in a guy that has so much experience at the highest level and has had so much success at the highest level, it can only help your team. And so I'm really excited that he's here.
With a healthy offense and some good additions, how much more can you kind of open up the playbook a little bit more this season?
We'd hope we can be a little bit more diverse. Every week's a little bit different, what you're trying to emphasize, how teams are playing you, what you're trying to do to attack that. I think that the fact that we've got healthy receivers right now and healthy tight ends, and we've got more receivers and tight ends really that we feel are productive players than maybe we've had in the past at this point in the season, is going to help us. We've got a quarterback or quarterbacks that have been in the system, so they have a better understanding of it. So you're able as a coach, to feel more comfortable doing more things, game planning a little bit more specific. We always have a base package that, that's kind of our foundation, but each week being able to add things that are going to try to take advantage of what a defensive scheme presents is really important. But you can only do that when you have a group that understands the foundation of your offense. So it should be a positive.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about NC State? And obviously, first game of the year, but you did face them last year. How much does that help? And is there anybody out there on their team in particular, Aiden White or somebody who you have to scheme particularly against?
Yeah, from a defensive standpoint, here's the challenge, is that you've got a coordinator and a quarterback and an offensive line coach that were all together at Virginia 2 years ago. You've got an offensive coordinator that was at Syracuse last year. Now they're all three together at NC State. So defensively, in looking at NC State, you're not really looking at our game from last year other than looking at particular players that you may have to stop because of the way they will probably use them. We know that their head coach and their offensive coordinator is very creative in the way he uses players, and you watch Virginia, he's very creative in the way that he uses tight end bodies. They've got some really good tight end bodies there, so that presents some challenges for us. From an offensive standpoint, they haven't really changed much. You know, they're a very, very good defense. They're solid up front, you know, one of the better offensive or defensive lines in the country, in my opinion. They do what they do, and they do it well, and they play very fast and aggressive. So for our offensive staff, we kind of know what we're going to get. For our defensive staff, you know, we just have to be fundamentally sound, play hard, play fast, be assignment perfect until we kind of figure out, you know, how they've built their system, because we really haven't seen all those guys together yet. Besides 2 years ago at Virginia, and, you know, in this business, sometimes that's a lifetime ago. You drop stuff and you pick stuff up as you go along.
Coach, how do you feel your team's better defensively?
Better defensively? Than what?
Than a year ago.
Well, I think that it's kind of the same as offense. You know, schematically, there's a better understanding amongst our players of what we're trying to do and what they're supposed to do. And I think they're more connected to each other in terms of knowing what each other are going to do. They're more comfortable in our system because they've had repetitions playing the call now. You know, early last year, we were kind of changing some things around. And now we had, you know, 7 or 8 games where we were kind of doing the stuff that we got good at. We had a spring. We were really able to focus in on it. We've had a good training camp to be able to focus in on it. So there's a level of comfort that creates a level of confidence because of repetition. And, you know, defense is it shouldn't be complicated. You know, do your job, play with great technique, and set your hair on fire and go to the ball. And that's what we'll try to do
With the experience,
without setting our hair on fire. Go ahead.
experience you have coming back on defense, does that give you the license maybe to be a bit more aggressive, maybe more blitzing?
It depends on the situation. Being more aggressive and blitzing more are two different things. We should absolutely be more aggressive because we know what we're doing. So you look up there, our little thing there, if you play with certainty and you play with trust, you're going to play fast, you're going to make plays. So to me, being aggressive is playing fast, right? But in regards to like blitzing, pressures, you know, bringing 5, bringing 6, bringing 7, yeah, when the guys understand the scheme more, you're not taxing them mentally when you add some pressures that maybe take advantage of some protection schemes. So but it's still a function of where you are in the game and how the game's being played. You know, I've gone into a game, went into a game, I think when I was the coordinator at San Francisco, the Buccaneers had just come off the Super Bowl. I think it was the second game of the year, and Gruden was a head coach, and we were just going to blitz the crap out of him. We were just going to bring it. In the first third down, we bring a pressure, and Joey Galloway goes like 80 for a touchdown, you know. And so the rest of the game, there was no more pressures. You know, it was 2 deep, 3 deep, and that was the only touchdown they scored in the game. So, you know, the situation in the game kind of determines what you do. Our expectations for our fan base, God, I don't like putting expectations on our fan base because I feel like we have to earn everything. I would love for them to come out and support these players that it's so important to, you know, that have worked so hard, that are running on that field trying to represent, you know, our fans and this state with a lot of pride. But ultimately, is if we can go out and play football and exciting football and bring fans into the stadium, you know, that's the thing, you know. I've said it a lot of times, people spend a lot of money to come into the stadium, and we gotta earn the right, you know, to have them want to open their wallet and spend the money or take the time on a Thursday night or a Saturday to come and support us. And that's one of the things we work about. We don't want to be entitled and think, why aren't there enough fans there? We respect the fans that are there. Man, we'd love it to be packed. We'd love it to be packed, but we got to build that. We got to build that, and that's one of our objectives. And winning, as we all know, winning is the #1 thing you can do to bring fans into your stadium. So we got to win. You know, we were 5-1 at home last year, so that's a decent start. But last year's over. We got to start over.
But how we faced Syracuse and that offensive coordinator last year, Jim.
Oh, in the one loss. I don't know. Here, Mike, bring it up. No, go ahead.
But can that help you because you got that tape from last year? You can see his offense. You know what
Yeah.
they're trying to do. I mean, will that help?
It'll help us, but it'll help them too, you know. So they know what we do. It gives you at least a start, You know, it gives you a start. The thing we have to consider is that, you know, the quarterback and the offensive line coach and the coordinator are now back together. So, yeah, it gives you a start. But you also know this, like all of us in the offseason, we go back and we study our scheme and we study who our players are and we try to create schemes and concepts that put them our players in a position to do what they do best. And so, you know, it's going to be important that early in the game that we try to get a feel in terms of what they're trying to do, how they've changed things, you know, the tweaks that they've made, maybe anticipate where they may be going with some things and try to do the best we can to get our players in the right call so they can have success on defense.
Jim, is there one group on the team, one unit that maybe is more improved, further along than you thought they would be?
On our team,
Yes.
it's hard for me to say until we get out under the lights. You know, I mean, I think sometimes you can be fooled in camp or in the off season into thinking that, you know, one group or one player's made this huge improvement, and then when the lights go on and it's real, maybe they haven't. Or conversely, you know, you're worried about a player, you're worried about a group, and when the lights come on, you know, they raise up. I'm excited about our football team. You know, I think as a football team, I believe we've improved, but we got to go out and prove it. You know, prove that we've improved. So I can't really say there is one group right now that I'm, you know, going, boy, we've really improved there. I have a feeling, but I can't. It's not confirmed yet.
How comfortable are you at the linebacker position, obviously filling those holes of Swenson?
It's tough. You know, losing Ian, losing Brandon. Those are two really good players. You know, Brandon, you know, has a chance to make the Buccaneers. I don't know when cutdown day is. I think it's coming up soon. But, you know, fingers crossed he makes it. And Jake. And we also, Burnsy scored the touchdown yesterday. You know, you want those guys to go on and fulfill their dream. But, you know, we lost some real experience in the linebacker room. Fortunately, in adding Noah Plack, we added some pretty good experience. This guy's played a lot of football. Now, it was at a different place and a different scheme, but he's still a good football player. So I feel pretty good there. And he's kind of an Ian-type body, bigger, but an Ian-type body and an Ian-type athlete. You know, he can do some things in space. And then, you know, Tui's been here. Tui's been here, and he's been working hard. He's developed, and it's his turn to step up and play, and I feel good about that. The depth is what's a little bit unknown. You know, everyone behind those guys is really new, you know, whether they're transfers or freshmen coming in. You know, hopefully we won't have to get to that depth, you know, unless we choose to. So I will say I'm comfortable with the starters and uncertain about the depth right now.
But you've got a great one that's back in Jackson Mitchell. Does he take on more of a coaching role with these guys now? Because he's got to teach them the ropes?
No, I don't think that that's his job. It's our job as coaches to coach those guys. Now, on the field, you know, he's going to direct things. He's our primary signal caller. You know, he sets the front. He sets the rotation. He sets the pressure. You know, pressure being a blitz. So he is the guy with the most pressure on him to get everything organized. And he does a great job of it. But I think the best thing Jackson does in terms of coaching is he leads by example. You know, his work ethic in the meeting room, his work ethic on the practice field, his attitude every day, his commitment, you know, that's kind of a coaching role. You know, those guys, they follow, it's a leadership role. He follows their lead. He's tremendous. You said he's a great player. And when you watch him every day, it makes sense why he's a great player. Because he does everything right, you know. And it's fun to be around guys like that. You know, it's not common, you know, in this day and age. And he's special. And we've got some guys that, man, they focus in and they learn from him. And he will have a lasting impact on this program after he leaves this program because he's teaching the young guys how it's supposed to be done. It's fun to have him.
Coach, in this day and age of the transfer portal, how different do you handle guys who maybe didn't get the starting job or aren't on the depth chart in a place where they want to be, especially the younger guys, in communicating to them that you still want them here
Yeah.
and you still want to develop and keep them engaged?
You know, it's something you didn't have to really worry about. You know, in the old days, you kind of waited your turn. And now there's that option of moving on, right? And I think the important thing is that you've created an environment on your team where they want to be here, where they see hope, where they know that their hard work will pay off, that you know, they know that down the road, and at some point down the road, their opportunity will come and that they're prepared to make the best of that opportunity. You can't let them, you can't let them feel undervalued or underappreciated, you know, because everyone on our team is appreciated just for different reasons, you know. There's different levels of responsibility, but everyone's important. And so you have to make them feel that way, and you have to verbalize it to them right now. You know, I think that's really important. You know, you worry about some kids that transfer in, especially grad transfers, because grad transfers they could bounce today, you know. But you got to make them feel valued, because they are valued. And but it's always in the back of your mind, you know. Are we going to lose this guy? Is he going to be so disappointed he's not the starter that he's going to find another opportunity? And we didn't have to worry about that in the past, and now we do. So it's not really fun, you know. It's not fun. It's unsettling. No, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about Coach Baylock.
Yeah.
I understand once the schedule's changed, they're going to honor him before the game.
Yeah.
What have you come to learn he means to this university?
Oh, I mean, he's a legend. You know, he's a mainstay. He's a fixture. I don't know that I've ever gone to an event or talked to an alum, a former player, that hasn't said, "Hey, say hi to Coach Baylock for me." That guy made so much impact on my life. And I mean, that's just a common theme. The impact that he's had on the people that he's been around at University of Connecticut, whether they're staff members, but especially players, is like, I've never been around a place where people that have been here in the past talk about one man the way they talk about that guy. And it's not just the players in the past, but he's always available to our players, you know. He's an old school guy. He tells it like it is. He's real. You know, he doesn't mince words. He's incredibly supportive. He's going to tell these kids what they need to hear. He's going to help them with the rest of their life. He's going to try to connect them to people in our community so they can get a job after football. And he's always around, you know. He tells great stories. And I'm really excited that he's being honored. And, you know, he told me the other night after our mock pregame, he said, "Hey, just tell the guys to go out and win one for the old grandpa here," you know, which I don't think of him as an old grandpa, you know. I mean, he's still got some spice to him. So I know he's excited about it, and it's well earned by him.
The talent and the depth in the wide receiver room.
It's improved. I didn't know if I cut you off or not. You want to talk about the talent? Okay. You know, we talked about this the other day, but, you know, you lose a Keelan and you lose an AT. There's some, you know, some good players, you know, walking out the door. But I think that, well, I believe our staff and our recruiting staff did a really good job of identifying some guys that could come in and really help us and improve that position. And, you know, I think about a guy like Jordan Porter, who started at Arizona State and then transferred. Now he transferred here as a grad transfer, and he's a 6'2", 200-pound guy that's, you know, one of the faster players on our team, and he's going to get an opportunity to go out and play. Excited about him, excited about James Burns, you know, who brings some real speed to the position. Excited about Buckman, who, you know, sure-handed, you know, just gets open. I think he's only dropped one ball in his career. You know, you got a guy like Kyleesh Hicks, who didn't really do much last year because he pulled his hamstring early in camp and just kind of fell behind in the learning process. And now he's a part of it. And then you get a healthy Cam Ross back. And, you know, this kid hadn't been on the field for, 2 years almost, right? I mean, a little bit last year late, but he wasn't confident when he went out on the field last year. You know, he was ginger about, you know, just treating things out. You know, he wasn't full speed, and he's full speed right now. KC, you know, is an improved player. So there's just better depth there, you know, through and through. And I believe there's, you know, some guys that can go out and make some plays for us. Okay. Hey, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it again on a Sunday. Enjoy your afternoon.